I was in the middle of a math test when the alarm went off. I looked up at my friend Fiona and sighed. Another fire drill, I thought. Seriously? We had just had one last week. I reluctantly pushed in my chair and gathered at the door with the rest of my classmates. It was the middle of January in Geneva, Switzerland, which meant that we would have to trek through the snow in below freezing weather to get to the field, where we would stand in line silently as we waited for the all clear to go back to class. To make matters worse, we had to walk through the snow in slippers. Yes, you heard that correctly, in slippers. My school in Switzerland had a policy that once we entered the building, we had to change out of our outside shoes into slippers. So, my friends and I, in our slippers, huddled together as we got ready to brave the cold. I was really hoping that it would be a quick drill. It was freezing outside, and quite frankly, I would rather be taking my math test. However, as we exited the building, I heard the piercing sounds of sirens draw near. I looked back at my friend Fiona and whispered, "I guess this isn't a drill after all." I mean, we had had a few actual fires at school before, but fortunately, they were never that serious. Like one time, someone had set a handful of popcorn on fire, and another time, the kitchen staff accidentally burned a few pieces of toast. So, as I trudged through the snow, I was wondering what meager mishap had caused such a commotion this time. Maybe it was a whole bag of popcorn. Who knows? But as we turned the corner and approached the field, I froze. The building right in front of the field had smoke coming out of it. Actual clouds of smoke. Now, this was not just any other building. This was the second grade building, and I had a second grade brother, Michael. My body was numb, but it was no longer because of the cold. What had happened? Was anyone hurt? Was Michael okay? Where is he? I ran to my teacher with tears rushing down my face and begged him for answers. He looked at me blankly and reminded me that I had to be quiet and that he knew just as much as I did, which was nothing. What could I do? I quickly snuck out of the fourth grade section and ran over to the second grade section. Every class was there, lined up, apart from one, Michael's. I wanted to scream, but I had to stay silent as I waited for news. I quickly realized that I needed to return to my section, as I did not want to add to the commotion. But it was in that moment, as I was running back to my section, that I saw an ambulance pull into the school. My heart stopped. I needed to see what was going on. A few minutes later, a stretcher was carried outside of the building, but it was too far away for me to make out who it was. As it turns out, my brother's class was in the midst of learning about toys throughout the ages. So, his teacher, Miss Karen, had brought in a vintage wooden train set that ran on oil to demonstrate how some of the old toys used to work. Miss Karen had Michael and the rest of his class sit in a circle around the train as she went to get a box of matches. In order to start the train, you needed to light the oil in the engine of the train. As Miss Karen was lighting the match, her arm accidentally knocked over the train. The oil from the engine spilled out everywhere, onto Miss Karen's arm, the carpet, and nearby papers. Then, the match hit the oil, and everything was ablaze. The projects, artwork, and posters that lined the walls only fed the fire. Meanwhile, Mrs. Karen's arm was entirely lit on fire. My brother, he doesn't remember much, as he was only 7 at the time. But he will never forget how terrified he was as he watched the flames spread. He would later tell me that, for a few hours on that day, he and his friends genuinely thought that Miss Karen was going to die. Fortunately, another second grade teacher heard Michael and his classmates screaming and crying as they sprinted out of the classroom. She quickly instructed the class to call the ambulance for Miss Karen before she ran into the smoldering classroom herself. A few minutes later, Miss Karen was rushed to the hospital with third-degree burns. Sadly, Miss Karen's entire arm is permanently damaged, even after she spent the entire rest of the school year and summer in a full arm cast. While Michael's class was fearing for their teacher's life, the rest of us were just standing in the cold, waiting. As a mere 9-year-old, I was utterly helpless. I mean, what could I have done? run past the line of firemen into the fire to single-handedly save my brother and his classmates with my non-existent fire safety knowledge and skills? Yeah, no. That would have just caused way more harm than good. There was also no way that I could have possibly stopped the fire from starting. I mean, I had no idea that Miss Karen was bringing in an oil-powered wooden train, and even if I had, I would not have known how dangerous it could be. The only thing I could do was control my reaction, and that just made me mad. As human beings, we crave control because we tend to fear the unknown. But most of the time, we cannot attain the level of control that we desire because it's simply not possible. And I'm definitely one of those people. I'm a planner through and through. I love to organize and list and schedule. But how could I have possibly planned for the fire in my brother's classroom? And now, fast forward 8 years, how could I have planned for COVID-19? I mean, how could anyone? When the virus broke out in Wuhan, it never even crossed my mind for a second that a few months later, I would be spending the remainder of my senior year in quarantine with my family amidst a global pandemic. So, how do we cope? How do we adjust? How do we accept the fact that we cannot plan for everything? Unfortunately, there is no easy answer to these questions, and I don't think there ever will be, because life is constantly surprising us, challenging us, and forcing us to grow. The most important thing we can do during this time is to take command of the little control that we do have over our own lives and over the lives of others. Whether you are donating money to a charity in need, writing letters to the elderly, making homemade masks, or even if you are just calling to check in on your friends or washing your hands regularly, you are making an impact and a difference. Even though it is easy to feel small and insignificant, as hundreds of thousands of people are dying worldwide and millions of people are out on the front lines risking their lives every day, that does not mean that there is nothing we can do to make meaningful change. And finally, for the seniors, I want to remind us all of the cliche quote, "It's not about the destination, it's about the journey." We definitely did not get the destination that we all anticipated and wanted so desperately. And it's truly heartbreaking. Trust me, I want nothing more than to be back on campus celebrating our senior spring all together. Yet, we cannot let this unfortunate event temper with the journey that we did have. Someday, we're all going to look back on high school. And I don't know about you guys, but the first things that are going to come to mind for me are going to be the friendships that I made, the challenges that I overcame, and the accomplishments that I achieved. Not the fact that I never got to experience my senior prom or senior week. But again, that does not mean that right now I'm not sad and mourning the loss of tradition and normalcy. We are all experiencing an array of emotions and hardships right now. But we are so fortunate because we have each other and boundless futures to look forward to. When I was 9, it only made me mad that I could only control my reaction. But looking back, I should have acknowledged the fact that the fire was not my fault, as I stood there anxiously praying for the best. However, I was too consumed in my own feelings of helplessness and frustration. Through the years, I have come to realize that it is not productive to focus on what I cannot control, nor does it feel good. Dwelling in all of life's what-ifs and negative emotions that come with unexpected and frightening events just compounded my fury. Although it is extremely difficult, I now strive to find what it is that I can control in every seemingly uncontrollable situation, no matter how big or small it may be. So, I challenge you today and every day to use the tiny bit of control that you do have for good. Spread positivity and try to make the most out of every fortunate and unfortunate situation that life throws at you. I hope to see you all again very soon. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.